The senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to take a few moments today to talk about federal workers in general and some of the people at the National Institutes of Health in particular. Government workers guard our borders, protect us from terrorists, treat our wounded veterans, dispense Social Security checks to our retirees, find cures for diseases, guide the nation's air traffic, explore the tiniest particles in the vast expanse of outer space, ensure our air is safe to breathe, our water is safe to drink, our food is safe to eat, support our servicemen and women in harm's way, and promote our interests and ideals abroad. Who does the government work for? Government works for America. The Washington Post recently reported that since reliable data first became available shortly before World War II, the percentage of all employed people working for the federal government hit an all-time low in December. Fewer than 2% of the total United States workforce is employed by the federal government. Over nearly the past half century, from 1966 to 2012, the most recent year for which comparable data is available, the number of federal workers in the executive branch dropped by 83,000. During that time, U.S. population increased from under 200 million to over 300 million people, and the gross domestic product nearly quadrupled. We can argue over whether we want bigger government or smaller government, but we should all agree we want better government. We can't have better government when federal workers are constantly under assault. We need to stop treating the federal workforce like a rented mule. We need to treat the federal workforce like the critical asset it is. A 2011 report by the National Academy of Public Administration and the Kettering Foundation concluded that programs operated by civil servants receive significantly higher scores for management and effectiveness than those run by grant and contract-based third parties. I think part of the problem is that Americans have come to accept that federal workers are just nameless, faceless bureaucrats. They aren't. They are people who are patriotic Americans and dedicated to public service. They have families and support their communities. They've been asked to do more and more with less and less, while being subjected to pay freezes, sequestration-related furloughs, government shutdowns, and the threats to their benefits. They have contributed $150 billion to deficit reduction while still working hard on behalf of all Americans. Today, as I mentioned, I would like to focus on the federal workers at the National Institutes of Health. I would like to introduce my colleagues and all Americans to a few of the federal workers who are making life better for all of us. But first, a description of the NIH so people can understand its mission. I can sum up its mission in 2 words: saving lives. The NIH is the world's premier biomedical and health-related research facility. Its job is to perform and fund the research that help improve the nation's health, a job it has carried out for over a century. I'm proud that the NIH is headquartered in Maryland, but it's important to understand that NIH supports medical research at other research institutions, has created jobs and fostered economic growth in each and every state, while establishing and maintaining the United States as the global leader in the life sciences. NIH supported research, added $69 billion to our GDP, and supported 7 million jobs in 2011 alone. In the weeks and months ahead, Congress and administration will have to decide whether to replace sequestration with a more logical, coherent, strategic, and responsible form of budgeting. While we will have disagreements over the details, if anyone needs to be convinced about the value of replacing sequestration, look no further than the situation at NIH. Funding restraints there are not only costing people their lives and jobs, they're costing people their lives. NIH funding has multiple drivers, but comparing the FY 2013 figures with the FY 2012, largely because of sequestration, approximately 640 fewer competitive research project grants were issued. Approximately 750 fewer new patients were admitted to NIH clinical centers. Each one of these affect a person's life. Each one of these have consequences when we do not move forward as we should. A recent survey determined that nearly 20% of the biomedical scientists have considered leaving the U.S. due to sequestration. We're losing our best. Nearly one-half of the scientists surveyed said that they have laid off staff in their laboratories or are considering laying off staff due to losing NIH grants. More than 50% of the researchers say they have colleagues who have lost his or her jobs. What is the impact? Delays in life-saving medical progress, medical breakthroughs that do not happen overnight. In almost all instances, breakthrough discoveries result from years of incremental research to understand how diseases start and progress. Cuts to research are delaying progress in medical breakthroughs, including developing a better cancer drugs that zero in on a tumor with fewer side effects, research on a universal flu vaccine that could fight every strain of influenza without needing a yearly shot, preventing debilitating chronic conditions that are costly to society and delay development of more effective treatments for common and rare diseases affecting millions of Americans. NIH Director Dr. Francis Collins recently wrote the column Exceptional Opportunities in Medical Science, in which he describes the excitement over personalized medicine, the BRAIN Initiative, and development of Ebola vaccine. He's also shared his concerns about the budget challenges NIH faces. And let me quote from Dr. Collins. Although all of these ambitious scientific endeavors offer exceptional promise for advancing human life, the effect that unprecedented budget pressures are having on biomedical research cannot be ignored. Due to inflation, the NIH budget has lost almost 25% of its purchasing power over the last decade. The decline has had important consequences. The NIH once funded 1 in 3 research proposals, but now only has enough resources to support 1 in 6. As a result, a great deal of excellent science is being left unfunded. Last October, Dr. Collins stated that cuts in federal funding slowed the development of vaccines and therapies for the deadly Ebola virus. And I quote, "Frankly, if we had not gone through a 10-year slide in research support, we probably would have had a vaccine in time for this that would have gone through clinical trials and would have been ready." End quote. Think about the lives that could have been saved. To Americans who wonder whether their tax dollars do, well, some of those tax dollars go to NIH to fund treatment and cures for cancer, depression, arthritis, substance abuse, addiction, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. To date, 145 NIH-supported researchers have received or shared 85 Nobel Prizes. Not everyone wins a Nobel Prize. So let me talk about people who aren't in the spotlights, people some of our colleagues might refer to as nameless, faceless bureaucrats. I will highlight the work of 2 of them today who are making a tremendous contribution as public servants. Dr. Nancy Sullivan, Chief of Vaccine Research Center, has been working on an Ebola vaccine for nearly 2 decades, dating back to when she was an investigator at the University of Michigan with the then NIH grantee and now former director, Dr. Gary Nabel. Most vaccines spur production of a person's immune system antibodies that block a virus from entering the cells. But that approach doesn't work for Ebola. That's why it's so difficult. Gene-based vaccines can induce additional virus fighters called T cells, so that what Dr. Sullivan created using pieces of Ebola genetic material, it's the most promising approach yet and is being tested in the parts of West Africa that have been hit by the hardest with Ebola, where more than 9,000 people have died. The concept for Dr. Sullivan's vaccine has been 16 years in the making, beginning back when few people outside the global infectious disease community had even heard of the deadly disease. Over the years, Dr. Sullivan and her team continued to tweak her ideas, constantly improving on them. Eventually, she followed Dr. Nabel to NIH. Many experts in the vaccine research community had begun to believe Ebola was insurmountable. They thought it was just too aggressive for a vaccine to ever protect against it. But Dr. Sullivan never lost heart that her work would one day prove successful. The Ebola virus infection is a highly lethal disease for which there are no effective therapeutic or preventive treatments. Consequently, work with these viruses require highly specialized BSL-4 containment labs, the highest biosafety labs. Dr. Sullivan is a leader in the field and has personally conducted many of the most critical experiments. Her work on immunology and vaccine development is widely considered as some of the very best in the field, in spite of the difficulties associated with access to BSL-4 labs. Her work has consistently been a source of novel observations. Dr. Sullivan has her PhD in cell biology from Harvard University in 1997. She received her Master's of Science in Environmental Engineering in 1989, also from Harvard University. I brought this poster to the floor where you see President Obama visited NIH to personally congratulate Dr. Sullivan for her incredible work on behalf of world health. Some people may be familiar with the TV show House. The main character, Dr. Gregory House, is brilliant at diagnosing conditions and illnesses that baffle everyone else. The real-life Dr. House is Dr. William Gall, the founding director of the Undiagnosed Diseases Program at NIH. He is America's leading medical detective, a physician dedicated to finding answers for long-suffering patients with mysterious illnesses that have long eluded diagnosis. Dr. Gall has brought together a unique combination of elite medical specialists, researchers, and federal resources to solve baffling illnesses and to provide desperate patients and their families with information and possible solutions and treatment for their often life-threatening ailments. Results including diagnosis and treatment of diseases so rare they don't even have names, plus new genetic discoveries, improved disease management, and advancement of medical knowledge. NIH Director Dr. Collins said that Undiagnosed Disease Program, which Dr. Gall conceived and started, served as a kind of court of last resort for patients without diagnosis. Dr. Gall has convinced some of the best, brightest, and busiest physicians to participate and has devoted tremendous energy to examining patient records, selecting cases for in-depth analysis, and help people who are seriously ill. Dr. Gall's stewardship, the program regularly involves a collective effort by more than 25 attending physicians of different specialties. The cooperation by a diverse group of experts have helped create a coherent view of each patient's instead of an organ-by-organ orientation taken by most specialists. Patients are brought to the NIH campus in Bethesda for an intensive week. They meet with a parade of specialists who study their medical histories, perform thorough exams, and take numerous tests. The doctors then meet to discuss what they have seen, discovered, or may have missed. They also debate various theories, trying to connect the dots and come up with a possible diagnosis and treatment. Scientists working with Dr. Gall discovered the genetic cause of vascular disorders not previously identified in medical literature. The rare conditions identified in 9 individuals arising in adulthood and causing arterial calcification in the hands and feet, but does not affect arteries in the heart. These symptoms include acute pain after walking more than a short distance. This disorder previously baffled the medical field and evaded diagnosis when conventional methods were used. In another instance, physicians working with Dr. Gall identified the reasons why a woman's muscles have grown painfully large and hard underneath her skin, making it increasingly difficult for her to perform daily activities. This turned out to be an extremely rare, generally fatal complication of multiple myeloma, and the diagnosis by NIH undiagnosed disease programs resulted in stem cell bone marrow transplant that allows her to lead a normal life. These are people who had no hope at all. They come to NIH and they've gotten government-supported help to give them hope and to give them life. Dr. Gall earned his BS in biology from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1972, his MD from the University of Wisconsin in 1976. He obtained a PhD degree in oncology research from Wisconsin McArdle Laboratories for Cancer Research in 1981. He has published more than 350 peer-reviewed papers and trained 36 biochemical genetics. Dr. Gall has made a number of seminal discoveries regarding rare diseases during his career, said that deciding whom to admit into the undiagnosed disease program is always very difficult, and much like triage on the battlefield, you have to make decisions about where you think you can do some good. The undiagnosed disease program serves people who feel helpless, who have suffered greatly, have waited many years for answers, and must be treated with respect and attention. According to Dr. Gall, the NIH caregivers understand the desperation the patients and their families feel and try to balance the difficulty finding solutions with a realistic measure of hope. Dr. Gall, director of NIH Clinical Center, said, Dr. John Gallen, director of NIH Clinical Center, said that Dr. Gall takes cases after everyone else has given up. He said that in a short time, the program has developed new approaches for investigating, understanding, and diagnosing rare disorders and has added to the body of medical knowledge. As Dr. Gallen puts it, As a result of the NIH Undiagnosed Disease Program, the language of medicine is changing. The different specialists are working together now and are beginning to find common ways. Nancy Sullivan and Bill Gall are just two of the dedicated people who work in the federal government. They are not nameless, faceless bureaucrats. They are dedicated, hardworking Americans trying to make life better for all of us under difficult circumstances. At a minimum, they deserve our gratitude and respect. They also deserve a predictable and reasonable budget to support their critical work. In the weeks ahead, I will be discussing the accomplishments of other outstanding federal workers so that Americans can understand government works for America.